Hey parents, so today in fractions we started comparing fractions. We started comparing fractions with denominators that are the same, but numerators that are different. And when we did that, we came to the conclusion that the fraction with the bigger numerator or the larger numerator is the larger fraction. That is only true if the denominators are the same. So another way we worded this was that a fraction with the smaller numerator is going to be the smaller fraction. And again, only if the denominators are the same. So then when we started comparing fractions with the same numerator but different denominators, we came to the conclusion that as long as the numerators are the same, the fraction with the smaller denominator is going to be the bigger one. And a different way to word that would be the fraction with the larger denominator is smaller. So I don't know about you, but in my mind, that's just like gobbledygook, and that does not make a lot of sense. There's no way I'm going to really be able to memorize that. So what I'm having the kids do is actually draw pictures. So for each problem, I'm making them draw pictures. They will always be able to remember how to draw fraction bars. So first of all, I'm using graph paper just so that they have the line to make the bar. These lines inside mean nothing. But the first fraction they're being given was 2/2, and then the next one was 2/3. So if we're cutting this in half, and I'm teaching them to label each unit, each piece of it. So this is 2/2. This one's thirds. So to cut into 3 equal pieces, we'll say it looks like this, even though it might not be perfect, but we're hoping. And then I was having them shade. So shading 2/2 and then shading, what did it say to do? 2/3 there. So shading that, and then I always like to do it in a contrasting color, and then shading 2/3. So then you can clearly see here that 2/2, when we're using these symbols, it's definitely not less than 2/3, it's greater than 2/3. So then we would write that like this: 2/2 is greater than 2/3. And then another thing I had them make a noticing on was that this is actually 1/2. So 2/2, another name for that would be 1/2. Okay, so then getting on to the next one, we have a third. So I'm going to actually do that. I'm going to shade the third. I wish I knew how to speed up YouTube. Hopefully you're playing it at double time. This one is 5/3. So they had to do this, and then they finally had to figure out that it's more than a whole. So they had to make another whole bar over here and divide it into thirds again. And this really lets them see what they're doing, because this wants them to shade 5 of those thirds in. And hopefully their shading is a lot neater when you see their paper. So another name for 5/3, I had them come up with that, because I think that's important for them to know, was 1/2 and 2/3. So for our comparison here, 1/3 is less, much less than 5/3. And then I had them come up with the other name for 5/3, which is 1/2 and 2/3. So this is what we're working on in math for today. This was Unit 7, Lesson 5. I'll just go ahead and do just a couple more problems. Fractions are hard for a lot of people. This is halves, so 1/2. There's another half, so you can see it's greater than a whole. Plus the kids might be watching this video too, so I'm going to be posting it. I'm going to do a few more. So this is shading 3 of the halves. So 1/2, 2/2, 3/2. And then again, I had them figure out that another name for 3/2 as a mixed number, it would be 1.5. And then this one was 6. And then we talked again about dividing it into 6. We talked about several different ways, or 2 different ways. You can divide it into thirds and then cut each third in half, or you can cut it in half and then cut each third in half, if that makes sense. So, and then of course we would label each little piece of it, each unit fraction, 1/6, 1/6, 1/6, 1/6. And then it wanted us to shade 3 of those. I also made them come up with another name for 3/6. What is an equivalent fraction to 3/6? And I told them, use your model straight above. Look at that. You can clearly see that 3/6 is equivalent or the same as a half. So I'm trying to make them have noticings during this. So if we were comparing these 3/2 and 3/6, you can clearly see that 3/2 is greater than 3/6. And then once again, 3/2 is really 1.5. So there we go. And then we could say that this equals a half. I didn't make them write an equation like that. Last one, and then I'm done. 6/3. So we're going to do thirds. And they can clearly see that we need more thirds. So that's a whole. 3/3 is a whole. So they know they need to draw another bar. And it was wanting them to shade 6 of those. And they right away, when they did this, right away they could tell me that that is 2 wholes. So 6/3 is really 2 wholes. They did that. And then on this one, it's 5/3. So again, they excuse me, figured out right away. We've already got the 3/3, so we need a new bar, a whole new one. And of course, I'm always telling them that their paper should be much neater than my paper. And on this one, it's shading 5 of them. There's 4 and 5. So you can clearly see by looking at the model that 6/3, I'm wondering where I want to write this, 6/3 is greater than 5/3. And then again, I had them tell me the mixed number for that, and that it was 1 whole and 2/3. So that's what we worked on in today's math lesson. And when you're looking over your child's work, their paper should be looking nice and neat like mine. I am having them tell me if I'm going too fast. I'm slowing down for the people that need extra time. So their paper should be nice and neat. Let me know if you have questions.